Hello, guys. I sincerely hope you have checked out part one of this special conversation with Gauranga Das Prabhu before you've clicked on this particular episode. If you have checked out part one, I am very sure that you're still heavy with all the knowledge that he shared in that part of the conversation. This one is as heavy, if not heavier. Remember, the Ranveer show is all about bringing you thick, knowledgeable, heavy conversations just like this. So make sure you follow us on Spotify. We're a Spotify exclusive now. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. I promise you, from here on, the conversations are just going to keep getting better. This was a groundbreaking podcast for me. Enjoy part two of one of the most impactful conversations that I've had in recent times. So, coming to talking about jealousy in general as a concept, it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Because I feel the last 2 years, ever since the lockdown began, we've had sort of a sudden rise with podcasts, with just everything. And I've seen how there have been two big changes in the outside world and one big change in me. So the two big changes in the outside world were, one, I feel it used to be cool to follow me, and now it's considered a little lame to follow me because it's too positive and all that. And secondly, people have a problem with how happy I am. So I'm also realizing that that's how the modern world works. They think I'm forcing positivity down the throats, but that's
Right.
not what I'm doing. At least I believe that I'm trying to turn people towards their own inner selves, see what's broken, and try healing those things. And maybe people are processing that as positivity. And everyone just wants someone to hate. Also, when you've reached a certain degree of mainstream success, it's not cool to support you anymore. It's cool to say, "Oh no, I hope this guy falls." Everyone loves seeing a hero fail or a hero fall. This used to, I think, affect me initially. For maybe like a few days, it affected me. And the one big realization was something you said earlier on this podcast, which is that even the people who are throwing stones at you, even the people who are throwing venom at you, they are also pieces of the universe and pieces of
Right.
God. And all you have in your own hand is your free will, both in terms of action and thought. Nor will I throw those stones back at you or that venom back at you, nor will I think venomous thoughts at you. So I've just come to that realization. I hope that that's the right way to go. And people call this a very Gandhian philosophy that you're not supposed to. That's too soft. But I've seen that it works for me because it's also the source of the happiness.
Yeah.
Whatever you do in the outside world is actually a reflection of what's happening inside. If I actually start throwing venom on the outside, I'm going to start throwing venom on the inside as well.
Right.
But is there anything else you'd like to add to this lesson of how to deal with jealousy towards you?
There is a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, which says that Titikshava, Karunika, Suhrda Sarvadehinam, Ajata Shatra Shanta Sadhavo Sadhu Bhushanam. So it mentions a list of divine qualities which manifest within us. These cannot be artificially plucked before time. They are given. Titikshava, tolerance. Karunika, compassion. Suhrda Sarvadehinam, to be the well-wisher, genuine well-wisher of all. Ajata Shatra, not to feel I am enemy of anybody, as you said, to overcome that tendency for revenge. Ajata Shatra.
Ajat Shatra. That's my theme of my life right now.
And Shanta. Shanta means to be in peace, whatever may happen. So he says, Sadhava Sadhu Bhushanam. So he calls these as Sadhu Bhushanam. Means a soldier has the power to fight the battle. But he cannot say, give me Paramveer Chakra. The government will decide. Similarly, as we are doing our duties and serving the Supreme in the right consciousness and refraining from succumbing to these tendencies towards revenge and spite and things like that, someone is seeing that from within. Right? So the social media, gives a lot of importance to what's coming from without. But you have to also see the views from within. So he's seeing everything. Based on that, when he's pleased, he starts releasing the scope of your divinity. All of these qualities are like medals of victory given by the Supreme. So, therefore, all of us need to work in a way that we are actually trying to exercise self control, and that will do good for ourselves and also good for the world. And that's what India has been traditionally famous for, that it consists of a population in traditional times where everybody was considering everyone else as part of a larger family. And that's why people get totally bewildered with India, with 1600 different languages and so many such diverse cultures coexisting simultaneously. So that unity in diversity is something which will be lost if we do not develop these divine qualities.
The more I get into learning about Hindu Dharma, the more I realize how much of a religion of love it is. As is the case with every single religion in the world, it always
Right.
begins as a religion of love. That's what's written in all the holy books. Uh, why do we see like our Hindu brothers and sisters sometimes nowadays being aggressive towards other faiths? It's a religion which teaches us to live and let live. People often reference the past and they say that no, we were wrong in the past, therefore now we are going to wrong. I mean, are you going to blame someone's ancestors even if they are the nicest people in the world today? Are you going to say that, how dare your ancestors have troubled my ancestors? Or are you going to say that, okay, this is the world that we live in? You are as much my brother and sister as my Hindu brothers and sisters are my brother and sister. Or are we going to say that, no, just because you're not of my faith, I'm going to reject you, I'm going to reject your beliefs? How do we as social media influencers bridge that? Because it's so dangerous to even talk about these topics, honestly. That's one goal of life. I've grown up with people of all faiths. We've made content about all faiths. I've just never understood how to put that message out there to fellow Hindus, because I've seen that there are definitely lots of people who still believe in messaging love and who believe in celebrating every single faith and spreading peace. But then there are definitely people who want to, uh, who have destruction in their hearts as an emotion. That's not a Hindu belief. That's not what Hanumanji was. That's not what Krishna Bhagwan was. You're being a Duryodhan while looking down on Duryodhan. So that's the question to you.
Yeah. See, I think let's look at things from the perspective of a good health and diseased condition. So when we look at health industry or a health scenario, we don't see a Hindu cancer or a Christian cancer or a Muslim cancer. Cancer is cancer. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Trividham narakasyedam dwaram nashanam atmana kamam krodham tatha lobham tasmat etat trayam. He says these are the three cancers: lust, greed, anger. So therefore, irrespective of whoever one may be, one must try to eradicate and overcome these. So therefore, comparison, complaining, and competition. To compete, to complain, to compare, to criticize. These are like the cancers of the mind.
Yes, sir.
And we have to try to overcome these cancers. And, Ranveer, honestly speaking, the world is such a complex place to run. It's very difficult to understand the details of how different people manage to operate at different levels in different professions, different scenarios. So as a monk, I have my kshetra area. As an influencer, you have your kshetra area. Like that, there are social leaders who are working in a certain space for decades. There are spiritual leaders, there are political leaders, there are diplomats. So each one of them have a whole tapestry of very complex interweaving of various issues which they are grappling with. I understood this more when I started attending conferences of United Nations, where for the first time I saw how much nature is being affected. And when I saw that analysis, so I could see that a whole group of people are dedicated. to understand that cause and deal with it. So, I would say that at my level, I look at responses at 3 levels. First is an emotional response, second is a political response, and third is a devotional response. So, emotional response means if someone misbehaves with me, I become totally morose and I go into depression and I become hopeless. Political response means I want to do something about it, seek justice, and then there may be a million ways in which I try to seek that justice, which can be subjective. Then the devotional response is, how do I see in that particular situation what is the message for me to learn and grow through that situation? And therefore, that devotional response is something which I have been personally trying to practice and sharing with people in our capacity as practicing monks. So, our field is limited to the scope of helping people, deal with a devotional response positively. Just like Vasudeva had 6 sons, he lost all the 6 sons. Then only Krishna came as the 8th son. So therefore, Vasudeva had every reason to be hopeless, but still he had hope. So we are focused in that paradigm. And there are many who are focused on a political paradigm, on another emotional paradigm, and therefore they would have their perspectives on many of these things. So it's at the same time, whatever I speak would only be based on hearsay and based on interactions which I've had, but I have not spent quality time in that particular space to be able to give a substantial answer, because my focus area has been personal practice of spirituality and sharing spirituality with others, preparing them for a devotional response.
Yeah.
But many are preparing just like Mahabharata, So Krishna, when he spoke the Bhagavad Gita, he was preparing Arjuna for a devotional response. And at the same time, the entire Mahabharata is also about the political response. Whereas if you see the Bhagavad Puran, it is all stories which invoke and inspire devotional response. So therefore, even within scriptures, there are different categories. And even among spiritualists, there are many who have dedicated their lives for using spirituality to transform society and influence politically and socially.
Yeah.
But I have not spent substantial time in that space to be able to comment.
So, but I feel you've spent time in the most important space of them all, which is the space of happiness. You're my 150th episode, probably, roughly, in total. Both you and Gaur Gopal Das ji were so happy as people, and I personally feel like that is the while we all have different purposes, feel like happiness is the purpose of life for so many of us. Which human being doesn't want to feel joy and peace? And I feel like if you have joy and peace as the core of yourself, it overpowers everything else. Even if you have joy and peace and you are a big political leader, or you're a big, say, I don't know, if you're heading a rebellion,
Right.
if joy and peace is your core, you will first try to come to a joyous, peaceful conclusion.
Right.
And you won't want to cause physical, emotional, mental harm on any other soul, irrespective of who they are. So my outlook on it is that I understand what you're saying and I hear you about it not being your response, but I mean, I just hope people pick up the happiness and peace from the work
Yes.
you're doing, from the work that we're trying
And
to
the
do.
entire Kurukshetra battle was orchestrated by Krishna in response to the adharma which he saw.
Yes, sir.
And, in that sense, Krishna was right there. And at the same time, Krishna was the one who stopped when he saw that, things were going beyond control also. So the important thing is not violence or non-violence. The important thing is not surgery or no surgery. The important thing is not how many liters of blood you lose in a surgery. But the important thing is, depending on the tumor, what does the surgeon decide to do? So I would say that harmony and purpose is most important.
I have a burning question which has been beating in my heart since quite early on in this podcast. You mentioned the Garud Puran, sir, when you were
Yeah.
talking about, you were
Yes.
explaining ghosts to us. What else is in that book?
The Garud Puran contains descriptions about how, from the time of death, how many days it takes for the soul to reach the next destination. And especially, there is a detailed description about the hellish planets. There is also description about what uh, we, the family members who are left behind, can do in terms of various rituals in order to create a better facility for those who have departed.
Hmm.
So the Garud Puran basically focuses on helping us understand that we have a responsibility towards our lives, and we also have a responsibility towards those who we were connected with in our family, not just in the immediate generation, but also several generations. So
Wow.
nowadays there is a whole lot of discussion on systems thinking, design thinking.
Hmm.
So basically, if you look at the Vedic literatures and the Puranas, they bring forth a complete systems thinking approach to life and death. It's not just one person living and one person dying. We are connected to everyone else when we see our connection with the Supreme.
Got it.
So that's how this paradigm brings in.
So you spoke about hellish planets. We also had an astrophysicist on the show recently, so it just got me on thought tangents about the universe and how it's expanding.
Right.
So again, from the philosophies that you've read, sir, what is said about the universe, its expansion, multiple planes? I know these are very deep, very complex topics, but even if you could just introduce us a
Yes.
little bit to it.
Sure. Thank you for asking this question. In fact, in 2023, ISKCON is going to be inaugurating one of the largest temples in the world. It's in Mayapur, which is around 150 kilometers north of Kolkata. And it's going to be known as the Temple of Vedic Planetarium.
Okay.
It's going to be a very unique temple where within the temple hall on the dome, you will get an answer to the exact question which you have asked. All the different planes and the planetary systems will be represented, and it will be in motion.
Wow.
And it will give everybody an idea when they have darshan of Radha Madhav that, we have been going through these cycles, the 14 planetary systems in the world. So from Brahmaloka down to the Patal Loka, the 14 planetary systems have been described. So Bhu, Bhuva, Suva, Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satya, and then Rasatal, Talatal, Atal, Vital, Sutal, like that. So 14 total. So within these 14 planetary system, different levels of enjoyment and suffering have been embedded. Just like even in a city like Mumbai, you could be, staying in Altamount Road or Malabar Hill, or you could be staying in a place like Dharavi, or, depending on the kind of place you stay, there will be a certain experience. So that is basically what the 14 planetary systems within a particular universe is described as. And how to go beyond that is basically the topic of the Bhagavad Gita. So it gives you a complete, tourist guide view of where you can possibly tour and options beyond there also.
So where are we right now?
So we are currently in what is known as Bhuloka.
Okay.
Which is right in the middle.
Okay. It's between heaven and hell.
Yeah. So the lower planets till the Patal is the 14th planetary system. After Patal, there is a description in the Bhagavatam of around 30 hellish planets.
30?
Hellish planets.
Okay.
So that is a separate division below Patal Loka. So again, when I say above, below, that is also not like something geographical up and down. But a fascinating description of this is there in 5th canto of the Bhagavad Purana. Especially if you go into the last 5 to 7 chapters, It is known as the cosmology of the universe. And in order to highlight that, the entire temple of Vedic planetarium is being built. The temple hall itself will be able to hold 10,000 people.
Wow.
And it's going to be one of the most fascinating temples, which will be educating people about what is the universe, what is beyond the universe, and where are you right now. Make my trip.
Also, the journey of the soul.
Journey of the soul.
Those 30 hellish planets you spoke about, so what is their purpose? Because I've read so many articles on these kind of concepts. Some of the articles I read were that they hold beings from other dimensions, darker beings, which is what when we say that, oh, there was a demon in someone's house, someone's escaped from one of those realms and it's entered Bhulok, our realm. But again, it's a very raw amount of
Yeah.
data I have in my head.
Right.
So, what is the purpose of those hellish planets?
The purpose of those hellish planets is just like, certain criminals are held in Arthur Road jail. Certain people are held in Yeravada jail. Some people are held in solitary confinement. There are different degrees to which punishment is given. The purpose is reformation.
Okay.
The purpose of any imprisonment or punishment, even say when a parent punishes a child, the intention behind that is reformation, so that the person feels, I must change. So therefore, that's the ultimate purpose for that.
And they are different degrees of
Different
suffering in those planets. So depending on your karmas, you are sent to like one of those planets after.
Correct, like that.
And I'm sure that if you have good karmas, are you sent to 30 heavenly planets?
as I said, that in the Bhagavatam 5th canto, the residents of the heavenly planets, they are praying to Lord Vishnu. Kalpayushat sthana jayat punarbhavat kshanayushat bharat bhujayovaram. That, my dear Lord, we see a very incredible dichotomy. In the lower planets, in the hellish planets, the pain is too much for us to be able to focus on you. In the upper planets, it is atishaya indriya utsavat. Every moment there is incredible sense gratification available. Too much of bhoga, too much of enjoyment. So then also we cannot think of you. I think the best ecosystem where we can think of you and contemplate on you is the middle planetary system, Bhuloka. Even within that, Bharatvarsh has the best kind of ambience, the culture to be able to think about you.
You mean in India is the best place
Exactly.
for spiritual growth?
So that's what the prayer is in the 5th canto.
Wow.
Kshanayushat Bharat Bhujayo Varam. Even one kshana for us is, and we see that it is a fact that if you have traveled all over the world, the way India is totally different.
So,
So many holy places, holy people. Within 2 hours, you will reach either a holy place or a temple or this or that. So therefore, that's basically the 3 things which I always focus on. The goal, if you want to be a boxer or a weightlifter, you have to follow a process, of doing workout and everything. But with the process, there is the attendant environment you need. You need the dress, you need the diet, you need other, bodybuilders or boxers. So if your goal is spiritual advancement, you have to follow certain process of spiritual advancement. To follow that process, you need the favorable environment. That favorable environment is most favorable in India. That's why India is the place which is the most favorable for spiritual advancement. Naturally, just like you say, America is a great, ecosystem for business or higher education, because it depends on the ambience, the environment which you create. So India automatically has that.
It sounds like a silly question, but I hope it's not a silly question. What do our ancient philosophies say about interdimensional beings or alien life, which come and visit the earth, or we hear stories?
Yeah.
Even in like the Mahabharata or Ramayana, where there are beings that are beyond the human realms. So what are these beings, sir? Like, what is spoken about them?
Yeah. So the idea is, 8.4 million species of life have been described in the Puranas.
Okay.
And within human beings itself, there are almost 400,000 different varieties described.
In terms of characteristics?
Characteristics, mixture of the modes, goodness, passion, ignorance, combination. So therefore, all of these scriptures speak about various beings in all these different planetary systems, and depending on the kind of karma you do, you can visit there. In previous ages, there was free interplanetary travel in Satyuga, in Treta Yuga, in Dwapar Yuga, as per the Vedic chronological understanding. But in Kali Yuga, that is not happening so openly, but still a lot of such interactions may be happening, but it requires someone very highly qualified and given access to be able to experience that and see that. So absolutely, such things do happen.
That's one of the, I won't say purposes of spiritual advancement, but that's one of the outcomes of spiritual advancement. There's only one purpose, which is connecting with the divine, but this is one of the outcomes, that you're given access through out-of-body experiences.
Some people
are. May not, you can actually, maybe you'll reach complete spiritual advancement without even experiencing these things.
Possibly.
Got it. So we have to head into a Q&A round, but I still have some burning questions in this kind of zone. In Christianity, we hear a lot about angels. Even in Islam, all the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, we hear a lot about angels. What is the equivalent of angels in Indian culture? Farishte or all that. Is it Indra Bhagwan? Are those considered as angels, or is that different?
Well, we have 330 million gods who are basically kind of they are like the people who are taking care of the universal governance. Just like the municipality has water department, electricity department, MSCB is there. Like that, Surya, Chandra, they are all the divine governors of this universe. Then at a spiritual level, there are the spiritual preceptors, the gurus. They are also angels because they are carrying the message of another world. In that sense, anyone who has an otherworldly connection is typically referred to as an angel.
Got it.
So one who is connected within these 14 planetary systems to other gods, those gods are also like angels. And those who are divine beings, spiritual beings, connected with the Supreme, so they are also considered to be angels. Devata karma sachivaha sadhavo dinavatsala. So comparison is given in the 11th canto between both these types of angels. Devata karma sachiva. The devatas are considered to be secretaries of karma. Hisab rakhte, they keep record. They cannot change it. But sadhavo dinavatsala. Sadhavas, they are like directly connected.
Yeah.
So they can actually change also. So therefore, both these kinds of angelic descriptions are there.
Beautiful. I appreciate you opening up about these concepts on this show, sir. This is not something, we see often on this particular show, but it's something I've been dying to do for a while.
Thank you so much for asking these questions. And, it's a pleasure for me sharing all of this knowledge with a lot of your audience, many of whom are extremely intelligent, very purposeful in life. And I encourage and inspire all of them to go deeper into the wealth of our own ancient Vedic and traditional Indian wisdom. And ultimately, the bulb was made by Edison in America, but it's lighting up the whole world. So like that, we have our tradition, which has been a part of India's dharohar, India's tradition, and it has the capacity to light up the whole world. So why not, get access to that?
Are you, do you ever even give a thought to people who will criticize you for putting this kind of knowledge out just because the world of modern science doesn't back it yet?
See, when you're dealing with health, if you have a health conference, you may have an allopathy doctor speaking about how he plans to cure. You will have an Ayurvedic doctor, speaking how he plans to cure. You will have a naturopath. So all of them are trying to provide some solution.
Hmm.
So ultimately, they have one common aim to solve the problem of pain of the body.
Hmm.
So I would say that everyone with different professions in this world, whether they are scientists, engineers, doctors, spiritualists, we are all trying to provide different solutions. So those who are of this world try to provide solution to problems of life till death. And we as spiritualists are trying to provide solutions of problems which we may face within this life and beyond.
Hmm.
So, in that sense, we are all in the game together, trying to
Yes.
make a difference.
Yes. But if anyone throws venom at you, what is your response as a person?
I would say that at least they are showing some attention to me. That attention is better than ignoring and
Yes, sir.
saying that irrelevant, forget it.
Yes, sir. Okay, so this is our Twitterverse round where we take questions from the audience,
Sure.
and because this is your first appearance on the show, I don't think people really know all the knowledge that you hold. So I would also urge people to be very, very active on the Twitterverse round, and the next time Sir's on the show, send in even more intense questions. But either way, sir, here's some intense questions.
Sure.
Manish Pandey bhai asks, "What does peace mean? How do we know if we are with peace?"
In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna defines peace as bhoktaram yagyatapasam. To number one, understand that the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer. Number two, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, to know that He is the controller. Number three, Suhridam Sarabhutanam, and He is the supreme well-wisher. To know these things, three things, that He is the controller, He is the enjoyer, He is the well-wisher. That is peace, as per Bhagavad Gita.
I'd like to highlight one lesson that I learned from the autobiography of a yogi, which said that when you're choosing between God and money, always choose God, for money is only a toy in the hands of God.
Wow.
But that applies to everything else as well. That applies to love, that applies to whatever happens in your
Right.
life. And what is the way of choosing God? Just be a good person, do honest work, meditate, pray, whatever your relationship with God is, allow that to flourish. Manish Bhai asks, what does death mean to him? How should I think and accept death?
Death means change. Change in terms of identity. So the change of identity is basically death. So we go through many such experiences of death in our life where our identity goes on changing. But when the identity changes permanently to another long term identity in the next life, so that change is referred to as death.
Yeah. Cut me short if you feel I'm revealing too much here, sir. But I've been reading a lot about death in my own spiritual studies. And while I'm not going to highlight everything, I'll highlight this one fact that scared me and stayed with me. So the spiritual stuff I'm reading describe the process of death, like what happens to the human body and what does the
Right.
human body really feel. So there's sort of a switch off of senses, but just before actual death happens, where you die, 3 or 4 seconds before that, you do feel some level of pain. And that pain is more elevated if you've not spent your life spiritually, if you're not aware of this pain. Now, that pain sometimes can be not intense, but it can be overwhelming because you realize you are dying. And somewhere your spirit carries that memory of that pain subconsciously. That's why in the human experience, we are afraid of death. But is there any mention of.
Yes.
Okay.
In the Garuda Puran, which
Okay.
you mentioned, there is a description that the pain at the moment of death is equivalent to the pain of the bite of 65,000 scorpions.
Oh, okay.
At the moment of death, when the soul is being taken out of the body, because it is the change in the ultimate identity. Imagine, I have visited hospital beds and I've met people who have had heart attacks. And when I ask them how it happened, and they say, one of my colleagues who was 5 years junior to me was promoted, superseded. So what So then I said, what happened? So I couldn't handle it. And that sudden change in identity in life, in episodes we go through every single day, affects us so much. It gives pain. People in relationship, when it breaks, it changes their identity. When someone in family dies, if a son, daughter dies, for the mother and father, their identity as a mother and father changes. So that change in identity gives pain. So imagine, extrapolate at the moment of death, where everything you have identified with in life is going to be snatched away at that moment, how much that pain will be. So that is the intense pain at the time of death.
And is there any way to reduce it or prepare your mind or body for it?
That's the main business we are into.
Mm.
So the idea is, death is an examination. The meditation is the preparation. So therefore, we are all spiritual, sincere, serious spiritual practitioners have one common agenda. How they can practice meditating on two main questions through their life, to be able to focus on those same two questions at that moment in the midst of that pain. What is that? How can I serve God? How can I please God? And those who are able to continue to meditate at that moment in the midst of that chaos, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, they attain to me without fail. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajanti ante kalevaram. So whatever is your thought at the moment of death, you will attain that after this life. So therefore Krishna says that one who thinks of me attains me. But it's not so easy, because when you're preparing for an exam, only when the subject is fully internalized, you will be able to identify any question which happens to manifest in any form. Otherwise, if you have just studied 1 week before and memorized and not gone deep, the same question comes in another format, you won't be able to deal with it. So therefore, death is an examination, life is a preparation. That's basically the idea of Bhagavad Gita. It prepares us for that moment.
Beautiful. Heavy but beautiful. Okay. Nachiket Nisal asks, what is the meaning of God for you?
God means service without selfish consideration, all attractive, Krishna. So we serve Him who's all attractive with a sense of selfless service.
And maybe do His work in the world?
We just try to share whatever He expects from us.
Lovely. Okay. Shreya asks, what changes can be brought about in the education system? As a spiritual leader, would you suggest that children know about the true nature of life from a young age?
Definitely, I would suggest through Bhaktivedanta Research Center, which is an academic part of ISKCON, we are trying to encourage and inspire study of religion academically, religious studies. So I would propose there should be a rethink and revisit to the understanding of secularism, which should rather mean that all religious traditions, and students and children and parents interested to teach their children any kind of religious tradition as per their choice should have a forum within the education system where they could study it systematically right from a very young age. If 1, 2, 3, 4, and atoms and molecules are being taught from a young age, these are the basic axioms.
Yes, sir.
So the axioms of spiritual life should be taught when the child is growing.
What kind of engineer were you?
I was metallurgical and material science engineer. In fact, 89-93, I did BTech from IIT Bombay. Okay. Sundar Pichai did from IIT Kharagpur, metallurgy.
Okay, crazy. Do you think about engineering college even now?
Well, I'm part of the whole consortium called IIT-IIT, which basically means IITians for influencing India's transformation.
Wow.
And also part of the global IIT alumnus. And, I have my role to play, helping people cope with life and, deal with stress and understand purpose. And many of my other colleagues have done very well in terms of business and technology. So I have focused more on spiritual technology.
When you were studying for your JEE, your entrance exam, what was in your head? You were very
Yeah.
singly
See,
focused.
I grew up in a place called Bhilai. It's in Chhattisgarh. It has a steel plant, and people in Bhilai are kind of very closely connected to each other socially. It's a very small town. Everyone knows everyone else. So that was the time when you know cracking JE and entering IIT became like the thing there. And we are all so socially affected, so we didn't have to think too much. Okay, 3 batches before me, they started. He has gone to IIT. Okay, all my friends with whom I would play cricket, they all went to IIT. So what choice I had?
Wow.
So I also thought, let me go to IIT.
Beautiful. Okay, sir. Adarsh Jha asks, what is the purpose of creation? And I think the follow-up question is, why was the universe created in the first place by the divine?
The purpose of creation is to help us transform and purify our desires, to be able to come in sync with the Lord's desire. To give an example, a father takes the child to the park. First of all, the child is cranky and keeps shouting, I have to go to the park to play. The father takes the child to the park. The father facilitates the child to play in the park. And then the child is refusing to come back. So then the father has to inspire the child, Baba, Mummy is waiting, please come, let's go back. But he just refuses. So at some point of time, when the child, while sliding down, falls and breaks his ankle and starts crying, and the father picks him up and says, I told you, there is a limit to how much you should be here, you should come back. So ultimately, that's the purpose of the creation, to help and facilitate the souls to come back home, back to the spiritual world.
Lippy Sharma asks, during times of turmoil or when people purposely try to trouble you or pull you down, how to cling on to God's hand, how to protect your mind from the disturbances others try to create for you.
As I described before, that especially now in COVID times, you and me have some responsibilities when we are in outside, in terms of social distancing, wearing masks and other things, and vaccination and various others. But beyond that, the major responsibility we have is to immunize ourselves with high immunity. That is very much within our responsibility, within our control. So I believe that we have to really work within our circle of influence, and we should have an eye on the circle of concern. But within the circle of influence is what I eat, what I think, how much sleep I get, how I decide to respond to situations. All of that has an effect on us. So I would say that, as part of our spiritual tradition, we need to learn those things. Just like a gymnast learns how to be flexible.
Yes, sir.
When he falls on the ground, immediately he can somersault and jump up. So like that, our spiritual traditions are teaching us that to fall is inevitable. But what the Gita is teaching is how to jump back up when you slip and fall. And that's what I am sharing in my book, The Art of Resilience. 40 stories to help people bounce back and come back on their feet. So you may consider loss of health to be a loss. Loss of health, loss of wealth, loss of property, loss of reputation, loss of relationship. These are not considered major losses in Bhagavad Gita. But the most important, powerful, loss is the loss of hope. And therefore, the Gita, the Bhagavad, and our Vedic principles and the temples which have been created, they all exist to make sure that you never lose hope. That's the main idea.
Sarthak Vijay asks, according to you, what should be the one goal that all of humanity should be chasing?
As Radhanath Swami always says, the purpose of life is to seek love and to give love. So we are all seeking love, and all of us have four choices: to be motivated by fear, which is in tamogun, mode of ignorance. Higher than that is to be motivated by desire, which is in mode of passion. Higher than that and minimum level of motivation which Gita recommends is to be motivated by duty, sense of duty, which is in mode of goodness. Higher than that is to act motivated by love, where there may be scarcity, impediment, discomfort, unhappiness in a relationship, in a situation, in an activity, but we still continue serving. That may be painful externally, but the most satisfying and blissful internally.
The Nanagram asks, why is meditation the only way to clear our thoughts? Are there any other practices we can do for the same?
There are various types of meditations which are recommended, and basically yoga is defined in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter. Yogastha Kuru Karmatvam. The four elements of yoga Krishna describes is: first is action, second is knowledge, third is meditation, fourth is renunciation, and fifth is devotion. So depending on how each one of these is prominent, then the particular name of that yoga comes. So when action is prominent, we call it karma yoga. When you're trying to attain your goal by increasing your knowledge, that is known as jnana yoga. When meditation is prominent, ashtanga yoga. And when devotion is prominent, it is known as bhakti yoga. So these are different forms of how you perform an activity, but your main intention and your faith is tagged into one of these.
And spiritual advancement can happen by pursuing even one of them?
Yes. So spiritual advancement, so just like variety, just like YouTube has so many podcasters, different people plug in and connect with different people as per their inspiration. So like that, in spiritual life also, as I said, that variety is the mother of enjoyment, and the entire process of love is based on free will. So therefore, depending on the various desires, there are various practices of yoga available.
I have this one story again I read in the autobiography of Yogi that stayed with me. I think, so there's a line I'll tell you before the story. The line is, never hold your spiritual evolution as a source of your ego.
Right.
Like if you're spiritually evolved, it shouldn't become an egoistic thing. Oh, look at me, I'm so spiritually evolved. That's also wrong, and it happens to a lot of people, even good people.
Right.
But they're like, no, I'm a spiritually evolved being. The story is basically, it's I think a European story. It's about a village where they heard of an island near the village. The village was on the banks of like a river. In the middle of the river, there was a small island.
Right.
So the people in the village had heard of three hermits, like un log ke sadhu, who were there, who were very advanced, but who lived like hermits, who lived very simply. So the main village priest, he thought that, how can they be so advanced? Because I'm dedicating my whole life to God, so of course I should be more advanced. So he takes a boat and goes there, and he meets them, and he sees that they're living very simply, and they're easygoing and all that, and they're very friendly. They welcome him, and it's a good energy on that island. But he tells them that, no, I don't think what you're doing right now is good enough, because all they do is they say, oh, we love God. That's their meditation. And he tells them, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. I'll tell you what's written in these books, and why don't you do these things? So they get very fascinated, and they're very grateful to him. because he teaches them like a detailed meditation. So then after he's done teaching them, he says, okay, now you'll keep practicing this. And one day, even you'll be, even more spiritually advanced, like how I am also very spiritually advanced, you'll be like me. So they say, okay, cool, thank you. And so he gets back on his boat and he's going back to the village. And then he can hear voices. So then he turns around and he sees that those three hermits are walking on water and saying, hey, wait up, wait up. We forgot that second last thing you said. And they were walking on water and they came to ask him about the second last thing he said in his whole meditation. So the point of the story is he realized that his way isn't the only way of spiritual advancement. And even simple emotions, love can actually get people way more advanced than you are living a simple life, living a clean life. And that always stayed with me. So every time I feel guilty because of my entrepreneurial career, when I can't meditate as much as I wish to, and I wish to meditate so much more,
Right.
somewhere I get a voice in my head saying it's okay. Just do your good work, be a good person, think about God, and that's also advancement. Just sharing that story. Arehan Jain asks, what is the greatest quality that humans possess?
We have the ability to transform and change
Ourselves.
And we can be inspired by various positive thoughts.
Yes, sir. Same person asks, what is our greatest distraction?
Currently, social media. Is there any competition?
Well, yeah. No, that's true, because social media has changed how we look at the world. It's become so much more validation based, our existence. Like now when you're in a good location, it's much more, well, let me put this in my phone. Like, rather than let me put this in my eyes. And then you'll relive it through your phone when it was actually meant to be relived in that moment. Again, Arihan Jain, good questions, brother. Arihan Jain asks, so what gets you excited about life?
The opportunity to serve continuously in the midst of like-minded people.
And what is your one wish for the world?
We become more compassionate and considerate towards each other.
Okay. I think we'll ask one final question, which kind of encapsulates this entire podcast. Tanvi Bhagwat 99 asks, in the end, we know we are going to die and we know we are going to take nothing with us. Then why is it so difficult to drop the materialistic lifestyle and materialistic goals and simply follow a spiritual life?
Well, that's exactly the argument Arjuna gave to Krishna, that let me give up everything and go to the forest. Krishna said, you are a Kshatriya, you are a fighter. You are saying, I will become beggar. When you sit in the forest and start begging and you go different places to beg, and when someone refuses to give you food or insults you when you are in the beggar avatar, your Kshatriya within will not go away. You're not used to insult. When someone insults you, you will take that begging pot and hit him because you are ultimately a fighter. So don't do anything artificially. The idea is not to abandon, but it is to acknowledge the presence of Lord and transform your attitude. So कृष्ण को अपने संसार को मत छोड़ो, भगवत्ता को और आध्यात्म को जोड़ो.
Just as we reach the end of this podcast, it started raining outside. I'm enjoying the sound of the rain. I'm enjoying having this conversation. There were so many moments in this conversation where I'm looking at you, I'm looking at, this love and peace in your eyes, and I'm just feeling blessed that you're in my office. So it's like, it's such a dear moment for me. It's very close to my heart. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much, Ranveer, for having me. And it has been a fascinating experience hearing these questions from you, because Bhagavatam says 3 types of people are glorious. One who asks the right questions, then those who actually share, and those who are hearing. Just like the Ganges purifies people in all the 3 planetary systems. So I think, these are the absolutely necessary questions for people in this world to contemplate on and apply in their lives and get transformed. So thank you very much.
So I'm just blessed to be a medium. I'm blessed to be a conversationalist with you. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I'd get to speak about these things on the internet. And just like, even if I thank you 1,000 more times, it won't be enough. So I'll just end the podcast. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
This was healing. This was heavy. This was a conversation I'd never forget. There's some people you meet in your life where you know that there's something divine about them. If you've reached this part of this episode, you've probably consumed part one as well. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. What was this mind? Where has this mind been? Why isn't there more of this mind on the internet? I feel like Gauranga Das Prabhu has a lot more to share. A lot more is coming up. I needed this particular conversation. There were two experiences that happened after this conversation. The first experience was that right after the conversation, I told Gauranga Das ji that I hadn't prepared for this conversation. I just went into it for personal mentorship perspectives. I just asked him the questions I've been thinking about from a spiritual perspective, from a personal perspective. And he answered so many things beautifully. In many of his answers, he actually answered questions which I hadn't even asked him, but I needed the answers for. And I'm sure you felt the same way. That's the power of wisdom with dedication attached to that wisdom. That's how I describe this divine soul. The second experience was when I was sitting next to him for the sake of posing for a photograph. And right after the photo was taken, he put his hand on my knee. And I can't explain it, but I genuinely felt like he blessed me just through his touch. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I felt. Intuitively, I felt like he gifted me something. And I've been told that with spiritual experiences like this, even the conversation was spiritual. You're not supposed to analyze it much. But I can't help but think about this conversation repeatedly because it was a very important conversation for my life. Just like all these other spiritual conversations that we've already had on the Ranveer show. We've been blessed enough to bring some of the world's most spiritually evolved souls on this show. And this is just the beginning. We're going to keep bringing many more souls like this. I hope you enjoyed this particular podcast. Please make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you share it with all your friends, all your relatives who will find value in these conversations. A lot more spiritual conversations just like this have already been created on the Ranveer show. And of course, we intend on creating so many more of these with divine souls, just like Gauranga Das Prabhu ji. Remember to follow TRS on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. I'd love to know from you guys on our social media, in our comment sections, what you thought of this particular episode, how it's impacted you, who else you'd like to see on the Ranveer show. And if Gauranga Das Prabhu ji is back on the Ranveer show, what would you like me to ask him? Think of this episode as just an introduction of the legend on the show. And he's going to be back for a lot more episodes. This recording session was extremely special for me. And I hope that the experience of listening to it was special for you as well. God bless you. Keep growing.